Hello and welcome to Storytime with Uncle Gravy. And today we're going on tour. I say on tour, I'm not recording this on the sofa, so that's kind of rock and roll, eh? Sometimes other places it's just more comfortable than the sofa, so that's where you find me today. So we're moving on to chapter quite a lot, In the Rustles by me, and Ash is still exploring, trying to get used to the new surroundings and also bumping into new creatures, while Hollie and Jake having a camp out, looking for all kinds of new creatures, but maybe not the ones that they were expecting to see. Ash had been making good progress and was beginning to feel more confident. This new land, wherever it was and whatever it was, shared much in common with home, so moving through it was not proving difficult at all. It was now a brightly moonlit night, but in the grass it was proving easy to move around unnoticed. Ash had reached the area that was level with the back of the tent fairly easily. The giants appeared to be lying down or sleeping, so it seemed to be the ideal moment to be as brave as a Russell had ever been and walk along the edge of the tent and go past them. Ash had done this easily too, and was now almost starting to feel happy again. The fence at the end of the garden felt like it was getting really close now, and Ash still felt like this area would hold some clues or give some answers on how to get back home. The new confidence was just about to be tested again, and although completely unaware of it, Ash was just about to meet the possible solution to getting home, but not in a comfortable way. Strange sounds, closer now, started to drift through the blades of grass, and although they seemed a safe distance away at first, Ash could hear that they were now moving around at an increasingly quick speed. After a few more noises, a couple of grunts, followed by a couple of much louder squeaks, there wasn't any more time to wonder what was making these noises. The hoglet was looking straight at Ash. The hoglet did not know what the creature in front of it was. Ash looked at the hoglet. Ash did not know what this creature was either. The natural thoughts came quickly and flashed through Ash's mind. It's seen me, then stopped. It's big but not moving. If I run away, are my chances improving? If it tries to catch me, I hope my fur tickles. That might be a way to escape from its prickles. Instinct took over next, though. Hoping and trusting that this large creature was friendly was a fine starting point, but staying alive long enough to find out for sure quickly overtook these thoughts. Ash picked up the nearest tiny stone that was nearby and threw it as hard as possible at the hoglet, which squealed, turned around, and ran back towards its family. Then, like another light being switched on, Ash had another big and important thought. It's big, and it's roaming around in the night. It's sniffing a lot, and may not have much sight. It likes to explore. It has spikes. It must be a hedgehog. I've seen one. But, oh, it's seen me. During the confusion caused by suddenly meeting each other, and Ash then scaring the hoglet away, extra eyes had been alerted too. What neither of the creatures had noticed was the pool of light which had been shone directly in their direction. As soon as the hoglet ran back into the longer grass, Ash realised with a shock that it now wasn't just the moonlight that was shining brightly. Without needing to think at all, Ash turned and moved as quickly as possible into the protection of the grass, curled up very tightly, and tried to stay totally still. This wasn't very easy at all when breathing as quickly as Ash was. "Jake," whispered Hollie, "did you see that?" Her eyes were very wide, and she looked completely confused. "Please, tell me you saw that." I'm sure I just saw something," murmured Jake, "but I absolutely cannot tell you what it was." The initial excitement of seeing the family of hedgehogs had already ticked a lot of boxes and had made the camp out a success, but neither Hollie nor Jake could have known that they would also be seeing something totally incredible too. "What do you think it was? Is?" asked Hollie, talking normally now because whispering was just impossible anymore. "I need to think," said Jake, still looking stunned. The reality was that there were no easy answers to what they had both just shone their torches on. It was late at night. They were both tired and both had good imaginations, but they had both just looked at something which just didn't make any sense. And it couldn't make any sense, could it? Ash could hear Jake and Hollie talking and decided that the best thing to do now, the only thing to do now, was to stay safe and hidden for the rest of the night. The plan to reach the end of the garden had been going very well, and it was now within quite a short distance, but the normal rules had been broken. Giants didn't ever spend time in the garden at night. They certainly hadn't produced beams of light before, and Chris had never shared any advice on what to do if a rustle was seen by one. Quite close to where Ash was hidden, a very old and dusty grey snail shell was lying on its side, and this now looked very inviting, as it would be safe shelter and would also feel more like home, which, at that point, felt like a long way away again. On the other side of the fence, Bernie and Chris were having a very strange evening too. After their early evening snack, they'd both gone for a small nap, which was the usual thing to do, before a night of exploring, checking on food, eating and tidying. However, the extra noise from the nearby garden had disturbed them, so a nap wasn't really possible. They'd both begun to doze off eventually, but then a loud squeal had woken them up, and they were about to make an unwelcome discovery. They both came out of their shells at the same time and looked at each other. And there was a pause, and then Bernie spoke. "Chris, when was the last time you saw Ash? Something feels odd. If something happens in the garden, I usually hear Ash thinking about it out loud, or we talk about it, but I can't hear anything. In fact, I haven't heard Ash for a long time this evening." Chris liked to have good answers to good questions, but this one already felt like it could have a weird answer. "I expect Ash is just napping for longer than usual, so don't worry about it for now." Even Chris didn't think that this answer sounded right, but only liked to share things that were certain, so wanted now to get some more time to find things out before sharing anything more with Bernie. "I'll go and find Ash. Why don't you find us all some berry bits to eat and we'll get together for a midnight meal?" When Chris spoke, it sounded more like an order than a suggestion, so Bernie set off for where berries fell to the ground. Chris set off too, in the direction of the fence where it divided the gardens. There seemed to have been a lot of noise from that direction so far that evening, so this felt like a good place to find Ash, or for ideas where Ash may be. Back in the tent, Hollie and Jake were still trying to work out what Jake had shone his torch on. What did it look like to you, Jake?" "And it looked tiny and kind of fluffy, but it looked like it was standing up." Her voice sounded like it was asking a question at the end of each phrase, and she was still asking herself the same questions in her head. "I'm sure the light bounced off two eyes. That's what I saw. Something tiny with fluff and two eyes. I couldn't see where the grass stopped and the thing started, to be honest, but I don't have any idea what it could be." "Well, there must be a logical answer to it." Hollie was now using the approach that her parents had given her for when she saw or discovered new or confusing things. All of a sudden, Hollie's practical head took over, as it was easier to think in that way somehow, even if she didn't quite believe what she was now saying. "There's no such thing as fairies at the bottom of the garden, and if there were, they wouldn't be fluffy. No, this doesn't make sense. We must have seen a baby animal of some kind, and the light must have just made it look different to us." "Yeah," said Jake, not sounding one tiny bit convinced. "But we both saw it, whatever it was, and we saw it scare off a hedgehog. I mean, I know it was only a baby hedgehog, but still." Hollie's science brain was taking over her thoughts. She was feeling tired now, so didn't have the mental energy for anything other than a practical approach. Imagining a small fluffy creature living in the grass at the bottom of the garden was using way too much energy, and lying in the tent while talking was making her eyelids droop and blink. The energy that Jake and Hollie had started the evening with had suddenly been hit hard by seeing a completely confusing and impossible sight. They were both far too practical to believe in magic or fairy tales, but neither could stop replaying the sight of a tiny animal seeming to scare off a baby hedgehog and then just disappearing into the grass. "Let's have a think about it tomorrow, Jake," Hollie yawned as her head rested on the arm which she'd been holding her new pen in. "Okay," Jake agreed, yawning too. "Maybe our parents will have an idea or two. There must be things that they know about which we don't." He lay on his back and stared up at the roof of the tent, which was glowing slightly from the moonlight. After a little while, the glow faded as his eyes closed, but he was soon dreaming a replay of what they had seen, or thought they had seen. Ash had climbed inside the snail shell and, although it had a small hole on the side of it where the spirally bit had broken, was now napping peacefully. The minutes passed by as the moon shone down on both gardens. Ash didn't usually dream, but was always really interested to listen to the stories about the dreams that seemed to happen to Bernie. Tonight was becoming a very strange night indeed, though, as Ash started to dream too. A voice, almost like a song, sounded like it was drifting into the shell. Ash listened to it happily, even while asleep, as it sounded very familiar, somehow. "Hello? Can you hear me? I know that you're there. I'm friendly. You're safe. I won't hurt you, I swear. For many moons now I felt lost and unknown, but I do not think that I'm really alone. I'm sure that at night sometimes you discuss choices, you chat and you share. Are there really three voices? I'm here, and I'm one, and I'm where the fence ends. I want you to find me, so we can be friends." There was now a smile on Ash's fluffy face, even though this gentle song or rhyme was surely just a dream, and was arriving while locked inside a happy nap. Closer by than Ash could possibly have known, though, Bernie had stopped absolutely still and was staring at the fence. Things had been working differently that night, but were now becoming stranger and scarier by the second. Normally Bernie would have been napping, and probably having the full moon dream and hearing the rhyming voice in it, but Bernie was awake and holding some raspberry mush, and that wasn't the scary bit. The scary bit was that Bernie was wide awake, but still hearing the full moon voice from the dream. It sounded like Ash, and it talked like Ash, but it wasn't Ash. It sounded as though it was maybe a long way away because it was very faint, but there was no mistaking it. Something was talking, but it wasn't in Bernie's little part of the world. Chris was Bernie's only chance for an answer, and, unlike many other times, Bernie really, really wanted Chris to know the answer to this problem. Chris had travelled quite a big distance looking for Ash, but hadn't seen any signs or heard anything useful, so was by the pond when Bernie eventually appeared, looking worried, tired, and out of breath. "Chris, have you found Ash yet? Have you seen anything? My friend, tonight is just turning into the strangest night, and I do not like it one little bit." Chris liked to appear calm, even if that wasn't how it felt inside sometimes, so replied slowly. "I have not found Ash yet, no. But that means that there are fewer places to look now. That means we should find Ash sooner when we both look together. The moon is very bright tonight. I think that maybe Ash has found somewhere new and darker to have a nap. We are both fussing about something that is probably very easy to explain." Bernie looked at Chris. There was a way that Chris explained things sometimes that seemed to make sense, even if there were still questions that needed answering. Chris also had a way of ending a conversation without actually saying it was ending. It just became difficult to add to it. Suddenly, Bernie didn't feel that asking about the faint voice from another land would help either of them. There were still too many things to do to find Ash, and finding their friend was definitely the most important thing at that moment. "Okay," sighed Bernie. "Let's have a drink here and finish the raspberry I brought us. It seems to have gone quiet everywhere now, so maybe we'll have a better chance of finding Ash in the darkest part of the night." Chris nodded, wisely. Bernie was impressed that a Russell could look wise just by nodding, but also felt reassured somehow that the night would get better. For Bernie and Chris, though, the night didn't get any better, and by the time the early birds started to ruffle their feathers and sing their songs, they had still not yet found Ash. It felt to them like their friend had just been picked up and taken away, or had simply disappeared. They finished the night tired, confused, and feeling a little sad. Even Chris was completely out of ideas for what to do next. The sun was coming up now and making the garden light again, so with noises now coming from the other side of the fence, their only choice was to find somewhere to nap. They both found a curiously shaped and much larger shell, and without even talking about it or having to plan anything, they crawled into it together. They curled up next to each other and were soon sleeping, but with tiny, worried wrinkles beneath the fur on their faces. Do you know what that pause means, don't you? It means that we've got to the end of today's section. So tomorrow might be more exploring. It might be ideas, it might be plans, it might be people trying to get back to each other's lands. Who knows? But we'll find out tomorrow. When normal service will be resumed, I'll be back on the sofa. The cat may even pay a visit, and hopefully find out some more exciting news and developments about the Rustles. So thanks for watching today. I hope you're all well, and I'll see you tomorrow.